Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. Today we'll talk about a couple of interesting plants, probably. At least we're going to talk about one, and that's going to be ilex or holly. Holly has some interesting medicinal uses. It's often considered to be somewhat toxic. Parents are often warned not to let their kids eat the holly berries, and it's not used much in herbal medicine anymore, but it does have some good uses. So we'll at least get into that. If we have time, we'll do juniper. If not, we'll just hold that for next week, no problem. But of course, we got to talk about the elephant in the room, which is that America, we bombed Iran's nuclear sites last night. I'm perfectly fine with that, by the way. Targeted strike, none of our soldiers were hurt or anything, and I'm fine with that. Really am. Uh, I absolutely do not want to get involved in a war with Iran with boots on the ground. I don't want our Navy to get entangled with their Navy, and have to shoot it out. Hopefully, it's a one and done thing, but we never know what's going to happen. And just remember, for 20 years minimum, they've been warning us that there are Iranian sleeper cells in the United States, Hezbollah and different ones, that are terrorist groups. Be real careful just for the next few weeks, y'all. I mean, be real careful for the next few months. Fortunately, we don't have really big religious holidays coming up. Thanksgiving and Christmas are a ways off. Um, what I guess Labor Day will be in a couple months. I would really avoid large gatherings, parades, concerts, events. I would avoid cities. I would avoid interstates, shopping malls. Anywhere you go where there's going to be people. Keep your head on a swivel and be careful. You know, um, who knows? Maybe nothing will happen. But I mean, we've had several terrorist attacks just in the past couple of years. I mean, they were kind of downplayed while Biden was in office. You know how that works. You get a Republican in office, and everything is, it happened and it's his fault because you got to blame the Republican in office. Biden, some Muslim active duty soldier, wasn't he? Or was he a reservist? Goes plowing into a crowd of people in New Orleans and, oh, nothing to see here. Don't, no, no. Another Muslim goes and shoots up an area in Illinois, up in the Chicago area. Nope, nothing to see here. It's a religion of peace. We don't even notice when they're in our country doing something, killing people. Um, well, now we've really struck Iran, and we struck them harder than we have since Reagan was in office. And you know, we've lost literally thousands of people to Iranian action since Reagan was in office. I mean, there's been the hijackings and the bombings of the embassies and all that was Iran, blowing up airplanes, that was all Iran. But also the numbers between 1 and 6,000. I think 6,000 is more the accurate number of troops and contractors that were killed and injured in Iraq and Afghanistan by Iranian weapons and proxies. It's just by no means something just to think it's over. God willing, it's over. I mean, they got hit pretty hard. Israel hit them a lot harder than anybody thought they would, and it looks like we've wiped out their nuclear facilities. And here's something that didn't really make the news. Day before yesterday, I don't know if you happened to hear, just very briefly, it was reported on the news that there was a 5.1 or a 5.5 earthquake in Iran, and then they stopped talking about it. My kind of theory is that, all right, so we know a lot of their nuclear facilities were underground, especially the one at Fordo. We know even the ones that weren't at Fordo have hundreds, even thousands of centrifuges. Now, in order to shut a nuclear centrifuge down, when you cut the power to it, I mean, there's actually like a staged process. If you just cut the power to it, it starts slowing down, and basically, I mean, just in layman's terms, all those atomic particles start hitting the walls as it slows down, and they tend to, they can blow up. And if one blows, and it's like a daisy chain reaction. They can, sometimes they don't blow up, often they do. I have a strong suspicion, and I could be very wrong, but that on Friday, a lot of those centrifuges failed, and there may have been even worse than that. I think more than likely that's what caused that earthquake, and I think one of the main reasons there was really no pushback to America going in and bombing those nuclear facilities is that's really the most efficient way to seal an underground nuclear facility is bomb it. So, I mean, the Iranians won't admit it, and I don't think anybody else would admit it either. But more than likely, there was a serious nuclear incident in Iran on Friday, and we took out their nuclear facilities sort of with their nod. Now they're gonna scream and shout, and they're gonna fire a bunch of missiles and try to save face because they don't want to admit to their people that that happened. Now, again, this is just speculation on my part, but it seems awfully coincidental that there was an earthquake a few days after Israel knocked out their nuclear facilities and actually cut power to even Fordo. And when you cut power, those centrifuges start going down. You can have meltdowns, you can have everything. They're supposed to have diesel backup generators. They've been using some very high power, high energy weapons. Diesel is combustible at a very low temperature. I think it's very, very likely that there was a serious nuclear incident, probably underground, in Iran on Friday, and they didn't really mind us sealing their nuclear sites before they had a real disaster on their hands. And if that be the case, and God willing it is, maybe they won't launch terror cells. I mean, in that case, we kind of helped them out, if you want to look at it that way. I don't think it was a coincidence whatsoever. Something blew up there on Friday. It just, it's just too coincidental for an earthquake just to happen in Iran, right between the Israelis taking out their nuclear facilities and us wiping them off the face of the earth, sealing them essentially 100 miles underground, 20 miles, whatever it was. Yeah. So, God willing, maybe things will be kind of calm. I hope they will be kind of calm, but that does not mean in any way, shape, or form that you should be complacent. If you have a concealed carry permit, I would carry. I do carry. But I would also avoid cities, events, crowded shopping areas, anything like that. And at least for a few weeks until we kind of see and can weigh and measure how this is going to play out. So that's my opinion for what it's worth. I don't have any special intelligence on this. I do have people I talk with. I used to work in politics and everything. I have some pretty good sources sometimes, but no one's come to me and said, hey, this is what happened. I'm just saying, pretty unlikely for that to be a coincidence. But any way you look at it, um, yeah, be real careful. And it's not only the Iranian threat. There are a bunch of nuts in this country. I mean, all these people that have been out there, going out there, the No Kings rallies, whatever the hell that is. I mean, they kept saying democracy, 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 and Donald Trump gets the overwhelming majority of the popular vote. That's the definition of a democratic election, and now there's like no kings, no king. Okay, whatever. Yeah, a bunch of idiots is all they are. And America's not a democracy in the first place. We're a constitutional republic. Our founders specifically designed a country that was not a democracy. But all they want to talk about is democracy until somebody's democratically elected. And then they want to have a riot. But also the pro-Palestinian demonstrators. They're getting really out of hand and dangerous. One of them ran a congressman off the road. I guess it was Thursday. Um, these are violent, unhinged, mentally ill people. That's what a liberal is. Liberalism is a mental disorder. Sorry, I know a lot of my audience is liberal. We can have respectful conversations, but at the end of the day, liberalism, progressivism, socialism, communism, fascism, it's all the same thing. Communism and fascism is two sides of the same coin. These like pro-democracy people call people who are actually use the democratic system fascists, which is kind of ridiculous. Um, we want to see fascism. How about vaccine mandates? The vaccine companies made a lot of money off of that, put a lot of money into politicians' hands who then mandated people take the vaccines. That's actually the definition of fascism, and that was Joe Biden and the Democrat Party. But yes, liberalism is a mental disorder. The more liberal a person is, actually, they've done recent studies. Uh, Almost well over 70% of women who self-identify as liberal take or Democrat, liberal Democrat, whatever you want to call it, are taking antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds prescription on a regular basis. The same number of women, same age group that identify as conservative, Christian, Republican, that number is more like 20%. So, yes, liberalism is actually a mental disorder. I have never in my life met a psychotic or a schizophrenic who was not a liberal. Sometimes drug induced, sometimes not. Well, I take that back. There was one, I don't know how political he was. He was sort of like the, wacko conspiracy theorist type. I don't think he had really sided with any one party or the other. Um, and I doubt he even was registered to vote. But anyway, I've never met a liberal that wasn't either mentally ill or really, really dumb. And the problem with them is they think they're the smartest people in the room, and they're actually the most ignorant of all. Whatever. All right, let's get on to the show. We're going to talk about Ilex holly. And there are actually, believe it or not now, because like I said, most people think holly is toxic. There are 21 varieties of holly with documented use in herbal medicine. I'm not going to read them all at all because, I had a lot of Latin there and I'm just going to be tripping over my words. But there are 21, and native to my region are several. Um, well, native, they're not several. I shouldn't say several. We got a bunch of introduced as well. North Carolina is really known for its pine trees, its azaleas, its camellias, and its holly bushes. And its dogwoods. Um, Remember rhododendrons, but yeah, we got a ton of landscaping hollies that are not native, but we do have some natives. We have Ilex glabra, which is inkberry, Ilex levigata, that's smooth winterberry, and Ilex verticillata, verticillata, verticillata. There we go, verticillata. And most widely naturalized is is Japanese holly. That's Ilex crenata. Well, I'm just thinking like at my relative's house in Pinehurst. Pinehurst, um, of course, named after the pine trees, known for all its azaleas and camellias and dogwoods. Hollies are everywhere. They're like probably hollies, red tips, and Wygea maybe. Those are like the main hedge plants, and there's the Holly Inn, which is one of the oldest hotels and restaurants in North Carolina's there. I'm thinking just in her yard, There are probably 3 to 5 Asian holly bushes and 2 large holly trees. Some of the small ones I actually cut and made spoons out of, and spurtles. They're very popular. Holly's a beautiful carving wood. It's hard, it's flexible, and it's pure white. It's like ivory. So what I would normally do is kind of toast it up, put it in the oven, let it get a little brown, and then oil it. It brings out beautiful, just satiny grains. I love working with holly. Actually, it's not the easiest wood to work with, but it's makes some of the finest kitchen tools, spoons, spurtles, forks. Makes real strong forks. It's flexible and hard once it's cured. Really nice. Now there's also Ilex vomitoria. What an odd name, right? Yopon holly. We'll talk about this a little bit more. It will grow in certain areas of North Carolina. It's more like at the coast, the southeastern part of the state. It's really more of a hot weather plant. You start seeing it a lot more in South Carolina, Georgia, well down to Florida and Texas. Um, Vomitoria. Why vomitoria? Well, it's the only native plant to North America that contains caffeine. And Native Americans would drink a tea from it until they threw up and then use it ceremonially that way. Not real sure why you'd want to do that, but apparently they drink a lot of caffeine, throw up a few times, start having visions, and dance around, and it was like a religious thing. I would avoid throwing up were it me, and if I wanted to throw up, I'd probably make a tea of tobacco. It's going to make you puke a lot quicker. Even better than that, and a little less rough on the system, would be a tea of lobelia. Lobelia is a very good herb for inducing vomiting. It's very much like tobacco, but a little easier on the system. But I like Yupon holly as a tea. I certainly don't drink enough of it to throw up, but I kind of avoid throwing up. It's like, I really don't enjoy it. I mean, I'm like, you remember that episode of Seinfeld where they go to the bakery and they get the black and white cookie and he throws up? And he's like, that's the first time in 10 years he broke his streak that he threw up. I'm like Seinfeld. I don't like throwing up. Some people apparently do. The Thomsonian entire system of herbal medicine was based on vomiting. That's not my idea of a good time. I mean, really, the worst thing is, I mean, like, when you're in college and you haven't really figured out how to gauge your drinks yet. You have one too many and suddenly your head's spinning and you're puking. That's like the worst experience. I mean, why anybody would want to do that to themselves, I do not understand. Now, that said, I love riding roller coasters. It doesn't bother me at all. It doesn't make me nauseous in the least. The tilt-a-whirl, oh my gosh. Again, I don't find it fun to throw up. Put me on a roller coaster, take me up in a small airplane, do some drops and dives and dips and the whole bit, loops and everything, barrel rolls. I love it. But put me on that tilt-a-whirl and I'm like, oh man, get me off of here. Why am I on here? This is not fun. But apparently some people enjoy getting dizzy and throwing up. Don't ask me. Yeah. Anyway, some people enjoy food at McDonald's. I don't, to each his own. So Gerard, 1500s England, wrote about holly that they are good against the colic. For 10 to 12, and this is the berries actually, being taken inwardly, bring away the thick phlegmatic humors, as we have learned of them who oftentimes have made trial thereof. In Elizabethan English, that means somebody tried it and told about it, and people thought it was a good idea. The bird lime made of the bark hereof. Now, that's very interesting. Bird lime is a sticky substance they used to use to catch small birds. You would take what's called bird lime and put it on a branch, maybe a branch with a few berries on it, and your robins and sparrows and such, and other maybe larger birds. Robins could be pretty big. Magpies and crows would land on there, and their feet would get stuck, and the person would just go out, snap their necks, pluck them, and have them for dinner. That was very, very common before modern game laws. Of course, that's now very, very illegal. So But anyway, he said the bird lime, which is made of the bark hereof, is no less hurtful than that of mistletoe, for it is marvelous clammy. Clammy meaning like sticky. He said it glueth up all the entrails. It shutteth and draweth together the guts and passages of excrements. So he's using it medicinally. And by this means it bringeth destruction to man, not by any quality, but by his gluing substance. In other words, if you use it internally, it could stop you up so much it would kill you. So, yeah, if you make bird lime, I'm not sure why you would. You're either going to be using it illegally or you're going to be killing yourself. So maybe avoid that. Holly beaten into a powder and drunk is an experimented medicine against all the fluxes of the belly and the dysentery and such like. Now, in that case, I believe he means the dried leaves. Now, let's see what Culpeper said, a little more plain English, about 100 years later. He said the berries expel wind, and therefore are held to be profitable in the colic. The berries have a strong faculty with them, for if you eat a dozen of them in the morning, fasting, when they are ripe and not dried, they purge the body of gross and clammy phlegm. But if you dry the berries and beat them into powder, they bind the body and stop the fluxes, the bloody fluxes, and the terms in women, so they could stop excessive menstrual bleeding as well. The bark of the tree and also the leaves are excellently good, being used in fomentations for broken bones, and such members as are out of joint. Pliny saith, the branches of the tree defendeth the houses from lightning and men from witchcraft. Actually, yeah, there's a lot of folklore with hollies. Not sure where this originates. Apparently, it was already a well-known myth or whatever in ancient Greece. But yeah, putting branches of holly above your door and in your house, or even planting holly around your house, was supposed to protect it from evil influences. In this case, Pliny apparently said witchcraft and lightning. Well, that actually translates down after thousands of years of folklore into our Christmas decorations. Holly being used to decorate for Christmas as a sign of good spirits as opposed to bad spirits, but it's also evergreen in the winter. That may be the source of the myths and legends, whereas everything else dies back in winter. Holly stays nice and green with bright red berries, and it has a lot of myths associated with it. You can kind of see where they're going with that. Well, Miss Grieve in the 1930s in the English tradition tells us that holly was the most important of the English evergreens, forming one of the most striking objects in the wintry woodland, with its glossy leaves and clusters of brilliant scarlet berries, in the general mind closely connected with the festivities of Christmas, having been from very early days in the history of these islands gathered in great quantities for Yuletide decorations, both of the church and the home. The old Christmas carols are full of allusions to holly, and she quotes an old one, "Christmastide comes in like a bride with holly and ivy clad." And you may know that even the desserts, the Christmas puddings, they put a little sprig of holly on top of it. Very much associated with English traditions of Christmas. But she gets into some of the lore that I find very interesting. I do. She said Christmas decorations are said to be derived from a custom observed by the Romans of sending boughs of holly, accompanied by other gifts to their friends during the festivity of Saturnalia, a custom early Christians adopted. In confirmation of this opinion, a subsequent edict of the Church of Bracara has been quoted forbidding Christians to decorate their house at Christmas with green boughs at the same time as the pagans. So in the early church, Christians were actually told not to use holly because the pagans were using it to celebrate Saturnalia, which commences about a week before Christmas. But the origin has also been traced to the Druids, who decorated their huts with evergreens during winter as an abode for the sylvan spirits. In old church calendars, we find Christmas Eve marked Templa Exornator. The churches are decked. Exornator means to decorate, essentially, which is where we get the word ornamentation or ornament. And the custom is as deeply rooted in modern times as in either pagan or early Christian days. So Very, very early, the church, Christians began decorating with holly, a custom that probably came from both ancient Roman and ancient um, Druid practice, but also the evergreen boughs that were very popular in German and Scandinavian cultures, from which we get our Christmas tree. And again, these are signs of, essentially everlasting life, evergreen, not dying in the winter like deciduous trees. She says, an old legend declares that the holly first sprang under the footsteps of Christ when he trod the earth, and its thorny leaves and scarlet berries, like drops of blood, have been thought to be symbolical of the Savior's suffering, for which reason the tree is called Christ's thorn in the language of the northern European countries. It is perhaps in connection with these legends that the tree was called the holly tree, as it is generally named by our older writers, or the holy tree. That's okay. So I have a friend named Holly, and she loves to make that connection that the name Holly comes from the word holy. Uh, and actually, well, I can't say more because she actually uses it as an identifier, and she wouldn't want me to look up. She wouldn't want me to put her public information out there, but she uses that connotation, that association, very often. Okay, so Turner, for instance, refers to it by this name in his herbal published in 1568, that is, holy tree. The other popular names for it are Holver and Holm, and it is still called Holver in Norfolk and Holm in Devon, and anyway, Dartmoor and Chase, and places that are important if you live in England and not important if you don't. Pliny describes the holly under the name of aquifolius, or needle leaf, and adds that it was the same tree called by Theophrastus Crataegus. Interesting, because we, of course, know Crataegus is hawthorn. Pliny tells us that holly, if planted near a house or farm, repelled poisons and defended it from lightning and witchcraft, and that the flowers caused water to freeze, and that the wood, if thrown at any animal, even without touching it, had the property of compelling the animal to return and lay down by it. Well, we'll have to give that a try, won't we? I have only had one dog in my entire life that would fetch a stick. So, should I ever have another dog, which is quite questionable, as you may remember, I lost my beloved border collie, Buddy, nearly a year ago. And even the thoughts of having another dog, not possible right now. Yeah. Okay, so description. It ends up you know what holly looks like. The leaves are thick and glossy, and again, you know what holly looks like. Not my friend Holly. She's the cutest little thing, but just a friend. Actually, if you ever met her, you'd be kind of blown away. She's a Barbie doll, but just a friend. Professor Henslow says it has been gravely asserted that holly leaves are only prickly on trees as high as a beast could reach, but the top has no spines. Well, that's absolutely false. I cut holly trees and carve them into spoons. I can tell you the top's just as thorny as the lower. Anyway, he said it's wrongly been said. Well, let's get into more of the medicinal uses. She talks about how it's used as a hedge plant. She talked about how the deer and sheep would eat them in the winter, and it was important to use in hedgerows for that reason. Rabbit breeders. She says, well known that two rabbit breeders that a holly stick placed in a hutch for the rabbits to gnaw will act as a tonic and restore their appetite. Very interesting, huh? And she mentions that the wood of holly is hard, compact, and remarkably even throughout. Absolutely, it's even at the center of old trees. I mean, it's really a joy to carve, even though it's hard. It's really makes some of the. I've got a couple of holly pieces for sale on the site right now. If you want to go Judson Carroll Woodcraft, and pictures of other ones that I've made, so you can see what I'm talking about. Just gorgeous stuff. I mean, really. She said a straight holly stick is much prized for the stocks of light driving whips and also for walking sticks. I could see that. Yeah, I'd make a nice walking stick. I might have to make one. So, let's get into the medicinal use. She gets into cultivation, and boy, she must have really liked holly. But anyway, parts used: leaves, berries, and bark. Medicinal actions and uses. Holly leaves were formerly used as a diaphoretic. That means it helps break a fever. An infusion of them was given in catarrh, pleurisy, and smallpox. So congestion of the lungs, pleurisy, inflammation of the pleuroma or the tissue essentially around the lungs, and in smallpox. They have also been used in intermittent fevers and rheumatism for their febrifugal and tonic properties, and powdered or taken in infusion or decoction. They have been employed with success where cinchona has failed. So, in other words, holly berries can actually be more effective in breaking a fever than quinine. So, see, this is when I started researching during COVID when we were looking for alternatives to quinine or hydroxychloroquine, and seemed to show some promise. Never tried it, didn't have to. I had a tulip poplar on my property and dogwood, so but yeah. Anyway, their virtues being said to depend on the bitter principle, an alkaloid named illicin. The juice of the fresh leaves has been employed with advantage in jaundice. The berries possess totally different qualities to the leaves. Okay, so wait a minute. Let's make that clear. I said the berries. I meant to say the leaves, and actually maybe the bark in that one. Like I said, I never had to use it. Did she say actually? Yeah, it is the leaves. She was talking about the leaves were used in an infusion as a quinine substitute. Definitely need to make that clear. The berries make you throw up. Okay. The berries possess totally different qualities to the leaves, being violently emetic and purgative, so throwing up and diarrhea, and very few occasioning excessive vomiting soon after they are swallowed. So even just a few of them make you throw up. Though thrushes and blackbirds eat them with impunity, that's true. Birds eat them. We really can't. But they have been used medicinally in dropsy, that's edema, essentially, excess water retention. Also in powder as an astringent to check bleeding. From the bark, stripped from the young shoots, and fermented, bird lime is made. So we've already talked about bird lime. It was used a lot in earlier times, mostly to trap birds, but also to stop diarrhea, and as a vermifuge. It was taken internally to get rid of intestinal parasites and such. As I think it was Gerard said, it could be quite dangerous, so not something you really want to do. The leaves of holly have been employed in the Black Forest as a substitute for tea, interestingly. Now, she even mentions that there's one in Brazil, that was the Ilex paraguayensis, and in South America, that's very much like our Yaupon holly. There are two that grow in South America. What is the name? Uramate, I think. But anyway, it's just like our Ilex fomitoria. And if there came a time we couldn't get coffee or tea, having one of those bushes would be a very good thing to have because it makes a very nice tea. Very, very good, actually. She mentions a couple other ones that have similar properties. They're all grow in South America. Turning to the German tradition, Brother Aloysius wrote, "Who does not know holly with its prickly leaves which one can hardly touch without receiving scratches? The white flowers grow on racemes along the stem. They are followed by red berries which have a strongly purgative effect. The leaves are used medicinally for gout, colic, and fever. The fruit also has medicinal use. If 10 or 12 berries are taken, they will have a very purgative effect and are a powerful remedy for colic." Turning to Native American use, the Lumbees used holly. These would be the Lumbees of North Carolina and South Carolina. A lot of them in Maryland too, but mainly North Carolina. So they're using our native hollies. And according to a Lumbee herbal, experts viewed holly leaves as diaphoretic, and infusion of the leaves was prepared to treat measles, pleurisy, and smallpox. Lumbee healers also prepared the leaves to treat intermittent fevers. Lumbee healers considered the berries to be violently emetic and purgative. So, same properties, seems to be the same as the Asian versions and the European versions, but not the caffeine-containing ones. Of course, I've never heard of anybody eating the leaves of Yaupon holly. The berries of Yaupon holly. It's the leaves that are used for the tea. But King's Medical Dispensatory of 1898 says, The holly is found growing throughout the United States from Maine to Louisiana, et cetera, et cetera. Very common in New Jersey. Um, the viscid substance of the inner bark is much like the mistletoe berry, so they talk about making bird lime again. The leaves are the medicinal parts. They have a bitter, somewhat harsh taste, but no odor, and yield their virtues to water or alcohol. They are believed to contain illicin. Um, Dr. Pancoast, I guess, in the Pharmaceutical Journal, wrote that prepared from the leaves of American holly, an aqueous decoction, a coction, that means water decoction, from which the bitterness was removed by charcoal and subsequently is abstracted from the latter by alcohol. What did he use it for? Solvent, crystallized, very bitter principle. Let's just I'm going to skip ahead to actions and medicinal uses. We don't need to get into all the weeds anyway. It says holly leaves are tonic and febrifuge and said to be very efficient in the treatment of intermittent fevers. The dose of 60 grains of their powders is administered 1 or 2 hours previous to the chill. And infusion has also proved beneficial in icterus, pleuritis, catarrh, arthritis, variola. The berries are said to be a metacathartic and cholagogue. 8 to 15 of them will act as a hydragogue. According to Rousseau, illicin acts decidedly upon the spleen, liver, and pancreas, producing a sedative effect, and is a cheap substitute for quinine. So again, the leaves substitute for quinine. Getting more into that bitter principle, and yeah, just getting a little too technical. I remember this is a pharmaceutical publication, essentially. Now getting to modern use. Plants for Future says holly is little used in modern herbalism. The leaves are diaphoretic, expectorant, febrifuge, and tonic. They can be used fresh at almost any time of the year or can be harvested in late spring and dried for later use. They are used in the treatment of intermittent fevers, rheumatism, catarrh, pleurisy, etc. The juice of the fresh leaves has been successfully used in the treatment of jaundice. The berries are violently emetic and purgative. They have been used in the treatment of dropsy and as a powder. They have been used as an astringent to check bleeding. The berries are toxic, especially to children, and should not be used medicinally except under professional supervision. The root has been used as a diuretic, though there are more effective diuretics available. The plant is used in Bach flower remedies or Bach flower remedies. They tell me is how it's supposed to be pronounced, but I'm still not quite sure about that. The key word for prescribing are hatred, envy, jealousy, and suspicion. The Bach or Bach flower remedies affect the emotions, and that's why it's associated to those emotions. But in more practical use, the Peterson Field Guide for Eastern Central Medicinal Plants says leaf tea used for measles, colds, flus, pneumonia, drops for sore eyes, externally for sores and itching, thick syrup of berries formerly used to treat children's diarrhea. Chewing only 10 to 12 berries acts as a strong laxative, emetic, and diuretic. Bark tea once used in a malaria and epilepsy. Warning, fruits considered poisonous, inducing violent vomiting. Absolutely. But then they also mention the yaupon, and it says American Indians used a very strong leaf tea as a ceremonial cleansing beverage, drinking large amounts to induce vomiting and act as a purgative. And they say this may be the only caffeine-containing plant native to North America, and I believe it is. I haven't run across another one anyway. There's Mormon tea, but that contains ephedra, made as a tea. You would not tell it any difference between that and caffeine unless you have a reaction to ephedra, which some people do. It can cause anything from rapid heart rate and high blood pressure to hallucination. But oddly enough, Mormons are not allowed to drink tea, but are allowed to drink ephedra, which is why it's called Mormon tea. Even more strangely, they are allowed to drink colas and other soft drinks that have caffeine in them, but for some reason coffee and tea and tobacco is off limits. Yeah, Mormonism really doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I mentioned before I was engaged to a very beautiful Mormon girl, the love of my life, who was taken from me because her family did not want her to marry a Catholic, and she was actually a descendant of Joseph Smith, and the stories she could tell you about what actually goes on inside the LDS Church are pretty darn shocking. really very much a cult. Sorry if that offends you, but it's true. Mormons are not Christian. They do not believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ. They pretend to be Christian, and it really is a cult. Well, anyway, I'm sure in my opinions today I've offended much of my audience. I hope you'll keep coming back for herbal information, but I can back up everything I've said with facts and life experience. Liberalism is the mental disorder, and Mormons are a cult. All right, y'all. And they're not Christian at all. Y'all have a good one, and I'll talk to you next time. And next time we will get into juniper. It was far too long to include in this show. Show would have gone an hour and a half, so juniper really deserves its own show anyway. So again, I'll talk to you next time.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.